I rise today to update this Honourable House and the Jamaican people on the impact of Hurricane Melissa on our forest ecosystems and to outline the decisive and science-based actions being taken by the Government of Jamaica to rehabilitate and strengthen our forests in the face of climate change. Mr. Speaker, it is very important to remind the nation where we were prior to October 2025, so we may understand the significance of the impact on our forests. The Forestry Department, having completed the land use and land cover assessment using data collected up to 2023, had reported previously that forest cover in Jamaica had been increasing steadily year on year and had increased by a remarkable 7% up to that point. What that meant was that 47% of our land of wood and water was at that point covered by forests. Madam Speaker, or Mr. Speaker's apologies, the House should note that the forest cover figures being referenced are grounded in Jamaica's RED+ measurement, reporting and verification framework, which is on the screen before members. Forest loss and degradation were assessed using high-resolution satellite imagery, change detection analysis, and on-the-ground field verification carried out by trained forestry teams across over 300 assessment sites. This combination of remote sensing and field-based data collection ensures that the figures before us are credible, transparent, and consistent with international climate reporting standards. The government has committed to expand the country's protected areas network to approximately 30% by the year 2030, commonly referred to as the 30 by 30 target. At present, Jamaica has declared approximately 24% of its landmass as protected under law, including the Cockpit Country Protected Area, the country's single largest terrestrial protected area, which spans approximately 78,000 hectares. The National Environment and Planning Agency is currently working on the declaration of 5 new protected areas under the Natural Resources Conservation Act in the 2026-27 fiscal year. That will include the Long Mountain, Canoe Valley in Clarendon and Manchester, Bengal in St. Anne, Montpelier in St. James, and sections of Negril in Hanover and Westmoreland. Additionally, the Forestry Department has declared 16 new forestry management areas under the Forest Act, and with an additional one to be declared in the upcoming fiscal year. The department is also working with the ministry on the declaration of 17 new forest reserves. These new protected areas will advance the country's achievement of the 30 by 30 target. On the 28th of October, Hurricane Melissa crossed our island with sustained winds and a destructive force that tested not only our infrastructure, but the very natural systems that protect our watersheds, our coastlines, our communities, our people, and our livelihoods. Jamaica's forests, our first and most formidable line of defense against flooding, landslides, drought, and biodiversity loss, were significantly affected. Mr. Speaker, the data is sobering. Between November and December 2025, the Forestry Department conducted more than 300 rapid forest damage assessments island-wide, covering approximately 528,000 hectares of forested land, including forest reserves, the forest management units, and privately owned forested areas. These assessments are not anecdotal. They are systematic, field-based, and guided by internationally accepted methodologies. The findings confirmed that Hurricane Melissa carved a west to northwest corridor of destruction across Jamaica, with western, central, and parts of northern parishes bearing the brunt of the damage. In several forests, Mr. Speaker, particularly those on steep terrain and shallow soils, damage levels reached between 76% and 100%. This level of destruction was characterized by complete canopy loss, uprooted mature trees, fractured trunks, and slope instability. Mr. Speaker, it is sobering to note that disturbed broadleaf forests were hardest hit, with over 42,000 hectares degraded, accounting for more than 30% of all recorded damage. Secondary forest areas of regeneration from anthropogenic damage followed closely, with our urban tree cover declined by 26%, and even our mangrove ecosystems critical to coastal protection suffered nearly 24% degradation. With respect to mangrove, the data confirms that approximately 23% of our mangrove forests sustained damage, primarily from wind throw, sediment displaced, and prolonged inundation. The key mangrove complexes in Trelawney, St. James, Hanover, St. Elizabeth, and Westmoreland experienced a 90% of trees showing evidence of uprooting, canopy loss, and severe defoliation. These structural changes have direct implications for shoreline protection, nursery habitat for fish and invertebrates, and coastal carbon stocks. That is why mangrove restoration has been prioritized within the national response, including targeted replanting at the Parity and other vulnerable wetlands, using species and techniques proven to stabilize shorelines and accelerate natural recovery. Importantly, Mr. Speaker, the assessments have revealed that approximately 51% of impacted forests experienced moderate to severe damage, defined by canopy loss exceeding half of pre-hurricane cover, broken and uprooted trees, exposed soils, and compromised watershed function. This level of forest loss has real immediate and potentially catastrophic consequences. These consequences include increased water insecurity, increase of flood and landslide risks, undermining of biodiversity, and threatens years of public investment of reforestation, long-term climate resilience, and environmental stewardship. Mr. Speaker, this Andrew Holness-led government has never shirked from our responsibilities. We do not respond to crisis with hesitation, but with action. Informed by these assessments, the Forestry Department has developed the RELEAF Initiative, Reforestation, Ecological Enhancement, and Landscape Framework, which will now serve as Jamaica's national operational framework for not only post-Hurricane Melissa forest recovery, but importantly, long-term resilience building. RELEAF is not a one-size-all program. It is a targeted, tiered approach that prioritizes interventions based on severity of damage, watershed and ecological importance, risk to communities and infrastructure, and operational feasibility. Mr. Speaker, under Phase 1 between January and June 2026, the Forestry Department will replant some 300,000 seedlings, with more than 170,000 directed to priority watersheds, with some 50,000 within urban and peri-urban areas. Importantly, no less than 30,000 of these trees will be fruit trees, ensuring that ecological restoration goes hand in hand with food security, livelihoods, and community resilience. Through partnerships, and here I pause to recognize the sterling contribution of Trees That Feed, a US-based nonprofit led by a patriotic son and daughter of Jamaica, land we love, has already provided a US $50,000 grant to supply approximately 12,000 fruit trees this year, which will be complemented by our own production from our national nurseries to supply at no cost species such as breadfruit, ackee, mango, avocado, and jackfruit, all of which will anchor not only our expanded agroforestry strategy, but also commitment to climate resilience through the National Tree Planting Initiative, Phase 2, which was originally intended to plant some 3 million trees over the next 5 years, but now is being rescoped and redesigned to do much more, much faster. Honorable members, we are also turning adversity into opportunity. Hurricane Melissa has accelerated the expansion and rescoping of our agroforestry program, allowing us to systematically integrate fruit trees into mixed systems with the sustainable rehabilitation of damaged landscapes, strengthening both ecological outcomes and rural livelihoods. Mr. Speaker, to support this scale intervention, the Forestry Department is advancing plans for expanded nursery capacity, including the establishment of additional nursery capacity in Western Jamaica, with sites under assessment in St. James, St. Elizabeth, and Westmoreland. This will increase national seedling production by at least 20% per annum and significantly improve logistical efficiency in the execution of rehabilitation and reforestation efforts in the most impacted regions. This expansion of nursery capacity aligns directly with commitments outlined by the Prime Minister in his 2025 budget presentation, where provision was made for the expansion of the Forestry Department's nursery capacity to strengthen Jamaica's reforestation and climate resilience agenda. Mr. Speaker, this brings me to the National Tree Planting Initiative, Phase 2. Having successfully delivered on our earlier commitment to plant some 3 million trees, admittedly it took a little longer based on the impact of the pandemic than we had hoped. This government has sought to build on the lessons learned and has recommended a national tree planting initiative, has recommitted rather, to a National Tree Planting Initiative Phase 2 to plant an additional 3 million trees. This initiative will be fully integrated into the RELEAF framework and will serve as a cornerstone of our long-term forest recovery strategy. Under the NTPI-2, which originally projected the galvanization of a second round of national effort to plant 3 million trees over the next 5 years to reinforce our national commitment to watershed protection, biodiversity conservation, urban greening, and climate adaptation. We now commit to achieving the target in less time, and we are confident that we will do so based on the overwhelming response from the Jamaican people who are volunteering in the hundreds to participate in replanting exercises. The official NTPI-2 launch will take place between the 29th of January and 2nd of February 2026, with targeted planting activities across forest reserves, private lands, mangrove ecosystems, and urban centres, from Low River in Trelawney to Croydon Estate and Kew Park in St. James, to Parity in St. Elizabeth, and communities such as Black River and Savlamar. These locations are not merely symbolic. They are strategic, representing the integrated approaches government is taking, linking forests to water, sustainable land husbandry, climate resilience to food security, national policy, and most importantly, community action. Honourable members, climate change is no longer a future threat, it's our present and unshakable reality. But this is Jamaica. We have never, nor will ever be passive. Through RELEAF, through NTPI-2, through expanded nursery capacity, community partnerships, and volunteer mobilization, we are rebuilding stronger, smarter, and more resilient forest landscapes. In the new financial year, the Forestry Department will focus on the implementation of the National Mangrove and Swamp Management Plan, working closely with key stakeholders on the restoration of the island's mangrove forests. This will complement implementation of the National Ecosystem Restoration Plan being led by NEPA. The government will also prioritize mainstreaming ecosystem-based and nature-based solutions in recovery planning. In this regard, forests and wetlands will be among the core risk reduction measures in Melissa-affected watersheds and coastal zones, explicitly valuing ecosystem services in economic analyses and national climate adaptation strategies, implemented through multi-stakeholder partnerships and long-term stewardship. Mr. Speaker, this is how we honour the legacy of our forefathers, and this is how we build and protect Jamaica, which is not only our desire, but certainly our destiny. This is how we safeguard our water, our land, our forests, our food systems, and our future. And this is how we honour the responsibility to generations yet to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.